Right, yeah. Hello, obviously that's my name, Harry Greenaway. And yeah, like I said, I'm here today because I'm in a position that maybe some of you will be in the next year or so.
That was me, sorry.
Yeah, I'll just quickly go over who I am so you all know me. I'm director and lead programmer at Antler Studios. I'm a lecturer in game design at Brunel University. And like I said, the reason I'm here is because we founded Antler Studios as soon as we left. So Antler Studios was originally a team of 4. We're all still there in some sort of capacity at the minute. We're based in Uxbridge, and we've been working on our sort of premier title, Project Grove, for about the last 16 months. So the talk today is going to cover our journey as a studio, my advice for getting started as a business, how to build a team, my tips on what kind of game I think you should probably go for. It's going to be a little bit of a case of do as I say, not as I did. I'm going to run over funding, and then I'm going to just give you some general advice into stuff that I couldn't. That's my shadow, don't worry about him. And at the end, I'm going to take the opportunity to plug my game, because I can. So Antler Studios started in September 2017. We were a group project team doing our dissertation, and when we finished, we decided that we wanted to carry on with it, basically. So we handed in the prototype in April, and we incorporated the company immediately afterwards. We then applied for a competition called Transfuser, which is run by the UK Games Fund, who also run a heck of a lot of other things. Through them, we went to EGX in September 2018, and we took ourselves to DreamHack shortly after that. And that was the first time we really got our game out into the public. That was a really, really formative experience for us. It kind of helped us kind of pivot towards sort of a commercial side of things for our business. After that, we had a kind of a wobbly phase. And I think if I can impress anything onto you from this talk, it's basically how to avoid this phase. So after DreamHack, we started looking for publishers and building a lot of demos. We also released a mobile game in order to meet the criteria for a certain fund. But ultimately, we decided that what we should actually be doing is making our game. So in June, we had a bit of an overhaul of some of our design and our story. And since then, we've been working on development properly. So how should you start setting up your business? Well, you should start with the admin. Registering the business on Companies House and getting VAT registered sounds boring. I mean, it is boring. But you should definitely do it because it helps you and others actually take yourself seriously as a commercial entity. You should 100% put someone in charge of this stuff. So that's Emily. She's our business development manager. And it's her sole job to handle administration, emails, talking to the public, talking to investors and whatnot. It's really important that you have someone whose sole job that is, because often that job can feel secondary to actually development and making the game. So if you don't have someone who's completely dedicated to it, you'll find you just don't do it. When you're building your team, you should start, obviously work with your friends if you like, but you really need to consider whether they're going to be someone that's good to work with. If someone's really funny down the pub, but doesn't kind of get up until 3 p.m, they're probably not the kind of person you want to work with. That might seem obvious, but something else that wasn't immediately obvious to us is you should research the people you're working with. And by that, I mean, look at their schedules, because someone might be super talented, but if they can only commit 2 days a week, you might find that down the line, you're doing a disproportionate amount of work to others in the team. And if you all have an equal share in the company, that can be a source of some tension. You should also look for mentors. This is something I wish we did a lot sooner. Business mentors, they're around everywhere. If you go online, you can sort of try and find them out. If you can't get a mentor, I would always recommend speaking to as many people in the industry as possible and always getting feedback from them. So if you speak to a publisher and they turn you down, make sure that you get something out of that interaction in terms of just what you could do better and how your business is going. So once you've kind of got your team together, you want to start thinking about your game. Again, this is going to be like do as I say, not as I did, because we've been doing this for nearly 2 years now. the first thing you should really consider when you're thinking of making your first game is the scope. I wouldn't recommend designing a game that's going to take longer than probably 6 months to make, because games always take longer than you think anyway, and you're probably going to be doing it unpaid, so the sooner the better. The chap from the talk earlier did touch on this a little bit, but you should totally do a product analysis before you actually get going. So research what's popular, think about how you could do it differently, think about if there's something missing from the market. So after we released our mobile game, we actually sat down and designed a Brexit game. And we were really enthusiastic about it, but we thought we eventually stopped doing it because we didn't think we'd be able to release it by the 31st of October, which is a bit gutting for E, but there you go. And also be original. Project Grove, our game, is obviously an amazing game, but the elevator pitch probably wouldn't hold a candle in the wind to Untitled Goose Game. So I encourage you to be as weird as possible and as outlandish as possible and find like a super unique aesthetic, because it's what you're going to need to stand above everyone else. So once you've kind of got your game together and your team, you want to start thinking about how you're going to fund it. And the answer is you're almost going to definitely bootleg your first game. I wish someone had impressed on me sooner how much this is the default. By bootleg, I mean you're going to do it part-time. Because once you appreciate this, you can kind of plan around it. You can like design a production schedule that fits around that. You can make sure that you aren't expecting too much of people because you know they've got work elsewhere. Speaking of that other work, if you are going to do this part-time, you need to find a job that complements what you're already doing for your game. So that means something that either keeps up your skills or something that gives you access to resources that can contribute to the development of the game and the growth of your business. And always ensure that you generate some value from your efforts. And by that I mean, if you're working on things, don't work on them in isolation. Share them with the rest of the world, and at the very least start building a social media presence through your work, because otherwise you might come to the end of the development cycle and find that no one knows anything about you or your game. That said, if you come in with the expectation that you are going to bootleg it, any funding that you do get is always a bonus. So good places to start. Like I said, we started with Transfuser, which is run by the UK Games Fund. They run a ton of different funds and grants over the years. They recently just ran one with Xbox called Green Shoots, and I think they're going to be running that again next year. I know the guy in the previous chat already mentioned this, but the mega grant is obviously a huge deal. What's often not apparent when you're making a game is that, particularly if you haven't decided what game to make yet, there are an awful lot of non-game related grants out there that are looking for products that might be useful. So we applied for one that was like making a game about healthcare, which is really weird. But it wasn't for games, but we thought we could make a game to fit that brief. So always be aware that when you're looking for money, it doesn't have to directly be talking about video games. I wanted to specifically mention this newsletter because a chap named Colin McDonald does like a monthly roundup of all the different funding opportunities that are out there. So I thought I would specifically give him a shout out because that's a really good newsletter to be on. And if you find that none of these things are working for you, you can start talking to publishers. So publishers are absolutely going to hold your lack of experience against you. It's really, really hard trying to get in there with a publisher, and you should try and your entire pitch to them should always be about mitigating this fact. So whether that's backing it up with a strong following on social media or backing it up by having an almost ready product. Unfortunately, unless you have like 10,000 years of experience between your dev team, they almost always don't want to know because they get like dozens of applications every week. Like I said, consider the public face of your company when dealing with publishers, because they're going to look into you if you kind of get past the emailing stage. Make sure you have a website, make sure you have a growing social media presence, and no matter what state your game is in, make sure there's loads of footage of it out there. And get your numbers right. So one of the things if you do kind of get past the initial stages with a publisher and you end up pitching to them, making a pitch deck or making a prospective publisher document like that, they really want to see that you've really thought about how you're going to fund your game and you've thought about all the costs. So you need to be upfront about your business model, whether it's free, whether it's paid, are you doing early access? You need to talk about why, what kind of financing you already have. So if you are bootlegging it and you're talking to a publisher, be honest about that. Also be honest in terms of like paying yourself a wage. So when we were at Transfuser, we did this kind of publisher roundtable talk, and a lot of the teams were asking for money, but they weren't asking for wages for themselves, which is really weird. And according to the publishers, they found that almost as off-putting as asking for too much money. So remember to value yourself and the work that you do. Make sure you have plans for the studio that go beyond the game that you're working on. They want to know that after you finish the game, you're not all just going to disappear, which does happen. And again, put someone in charge of all this stuff. If you're making the game, it can feel like a bit of a distraction to kind of put together these big publisher documents. So you need to have someone whose job is very much about handling all of that. And then so I just wanted to add a few general pieces of advice that couldn't really fit into a theme. Make your game as it's meant to be played. This is a bit of a weird one, but that period I talked about after we left DreamHack, we spent months and months working on an iteration of a demo that wasn't really our game as it was supposed to be. It was a vertical slice of lots and lots of different features, and it was kind of just cramming too much into it. And we actually found as soon as we started making the game kind of from the start, polishing our core mechanic and put it into the hands of people, they actually engaged with it a lot more anyway. So don't waste time making something that's not going to contribute to the final product if you can avoid it. I know I've said this like 3 times already, but the non-game stuff needs a dedicated person. So Emily, like I said, handles our business development and our administration. But the first person we actually hired at the company was a marketing executive. And we kind of recognized that as the most valuable job. And since doing that, we've had a lot of growth actually across our various platforms. And she actually made me aware of today. So the reason I'm here today is because we hire people to do this non-game stuff. Spend enough time in pre-production. So you should all be working with like an agile development methodology. There are a ton of good tools out there for doing that. Scrumwise is really good. We use Monday.com. It's important that you spend enough time planning out the actual development of your game and getting feature by feature, because if you accept that you're not going to be paid for most of it, it makes people a lot more accountable because they have deadlines to meet. And it's also something that you can display publicly to show publishers and investors how your actual development is going. So definitely spend as much time as you can in pre-production. And this one's a bit meta because this is where I would be otherwise. Get out of your bedroom. Do stuff like this. Go to as many shows as possible. Go to as many networking events as possible. Because the biggest changes in the kind of growth of our game and of our company have happened off the back of us going to trade shows and meeting new people. So you should always take every opportunity that you can to do those things. Lots of places offer discounts for indies, or you can kind of still wing it as a student if you've just come out of there. We actually snuck into Casual Connect on pretending we were journalists. Not that I'm recommending being an imposter, but just get out there as much as you can. So I think just to contextualize all of this, I just want to, our trailer wasn't actually finished, but I have a little gameplay montage of Project Grove, just so you kind of know what I'm talking about. This is from our trip to EGX, which we just came back from last month, I think. Yeah, hopefully it plays. I don't think there's any sound. Okay. Imagine there's sound. I feel like I should talk over it now, there's no sound. Okay, so yeah, Project Grove is basically a game about you have one platform in the world that you can put anywhere. So we kind of start with that. You're bridging gaps, crossing over ledges, avoiding things, and then we layer on top of that a potion system that allows you and your little robot helper to do a lot more. It's a real shame there's no music, but that's that. Yeah, it's heavily inspired by like Portal and Fable, and it's got a lot of humor. If If the sound was on, you'd hear some jokes right now, but you'll just have to pretend that they're really funny.
Tell the jokes yourself.
Yeah, I wish I knew what they were. But yeah, so it's a bit of a quick one from me, but it's just quite a casual chat about what and what not to expect. Thank you.
Microphone's on or not. So could you just tell us a bit more about Transfuser?
Yeah.
And how that works?
Yes. So Transfuser is a competition run every year by the UK Games Fund. It starts on a regional basis, so there are a bunch of hubs around the country, and you need to find your local hub and apply for them with your game idea. You'll go in with a video pitch. I think they change it a little bit every year, but you normally go in with a video pitch and a pitch deck. And if you get through, when the year we were doing it, you get 5K immediately, and you become that hub's team. And then all the hubs get together at EGX, and you have a big kind of you have a space at EGX where all your games are shown and all the public can play it, and you get to talk to whoever's there. And then after EGX, while you're still there, you also pitch to Transfuser, and that's the next round. And then if you get through that round, they will fund your game. The amounts differ year to year. I think the year we were there, they only funded one game, but the year just gone, they funded like 3 or 4. And it's kind of like free money, it's quite easy to get in. The competition at the hub level isn't normally too bad. There are only ever like 3 or 4 teams applying per hub, so it's definitely something you guys should do. And it's aimed at students, so it's really where you should start.
And luckily, we do actually have a hub here at Staffordshire University, and actually the hub director is here at the moment.
He's probably better to talk about it now.
If you are interested in doing something with Transfuser at Staffordshire University, then come and see Alno Day afterwards. And you want to know more about the experience of Transfuser,
talk to me.
Speak to Harry afterwards as well.
Follow-on question.
Yeah.
What one thing would you have done differently on your Transfuser project for these guys that are thinking of maybe?
Yeah.
Is it on?
I think so.
So,
I don't know.
yeah, the question was, what would I have done differently? Yeah. So I think my earlier point about scope that I made is not one that I took on board at Transfuser. Our project was just too big. It had too many features. It was too much going on. And like I said, in our prototype, that there were too many things kind of trying to get through the door at once and nothing got through. So my advice to kind of summarize that would to be like, pick your game idea, polish it, as much as you can and just run with it. Forget about all the superfluous stuff that you're not going to be able to show on the trade floor, would probably be what I would say to myself.
Very much. Cheers.
And on the trade floor, do you actually have 30 seconds to pitch it, or?
No, so the pitch takes place in the offices away from the trade floor.
Right, okay.
The trade floor is where the public come and play your game, so you have to man a stand for 3
it
days.
has to be a playable.
Yeah, you do have to bring a playable prototype to Transfuser. Cool. Are there any other questions? Yeah.
Take this one up here first of all. The microphone is for the video, so.
Hey. It is, isn't it?
Your business person, Emily.
Yeah.
How did you find her? How did you decide that she was the right person?
So Emily was actually part of our core team. She started off as our lead designer, but we kind of... So I talked in my slide about figuring out who does what and how good they are at things, and I'm saying that because it's something we didn't do enough of when we were at university. Emily was our lead designer at the time, and the chap who was our producer was way, way, way better at designing games than Emily. So the rocky journey we had to kind of go through was figuring out who needs to do what, and we found that Emily had experience in marketing and in that kind of business development world that I didn't even know about. So that kind of happened naturally. The other person that we've actually hired to do our marketing, we just found her through a standard interview process. We put out a job across a few job sites, I think, Indeed maybe. And yeah, you just go through interviews and stuff for that kind of job.
Yeah, so just quick on the company's plan now. What are your next 6 months kind of?
So we're running a Kickstarter in January, which is kind of off the back of this girl that we've hired to do our marketing. We've sat down and thought about the scope of our game. We sat down and thought about the gaps in our skills. We're going to be running a Kickstarter in January, and all the way into that, we're working on our game, building content, putting it out there, just kind of doing what you'd expect really. But the difference is the content that we're making to show the public is also directly contributing to the game. Whereas when we were making demos and fanning around with little projects, we weren't doing that. So yeah, that's our plan.
I've literally just started my own company as well, not doing this, but something else.
Yeah.
And my next question is, how have you managed to find essentially the time between doing actual, covering your bills and working full time, and then trying to make it work? How does that work out for you?
So it was always kind of like a bit mishmash for a long time, but the change really happened when we accepted that we can do this 3 days a week. We're gonna do part-time jobs for the rest of the time. So I won't lie to you, like it's super hard. Like I work 6 days a week. I normally finish at like 7 or 8 o'clock every night. But you just need to split that time up. You need to you need to find a job that can pay your bills and get that sorted first, and then look at what time you have left, and then collectively decide how can we use this time we have left to make something realistic. So it's very much about planning. You really have to think about how much time you have, what can you make in that time, and then block it out.
And then my next one is, what kind of engine are you using at the moment?
We're using Unreal. Yeah, obviously. Couldn't come here with a Unity game, could I?
And another thing is also plan your leisure time as well. So
No leisure time allowed.
when you're going to you have to have downtime for your mental health. So if you're going to go to the gym, plan when you're going to go to the gym and that sort of thing.
I do go to the gym before work every morning. That is like the only thing. So yeah, stay sane.
Okay, there's another one over there. Making me run.
Hey. Yeah.
So, so right at the start, when you guys were like working part time and whatnot, how did you kind of like, did you guys all go into one house and do it that way, or did you do it all online?
So we had the advantage of when we started of all being at university. So we handed in the prototype before we actually graduated. So we were kind of about for those first few months. And I would recommend trying to be like geographically together at the start. But now we're all kind of all over the place. There are 2 of us in Oxford. One of them's in Hertfordshire and one's in Reading. So we have daily stands. We have a meeting every morning over webcam, over Google, whatever. And we all say what we're going to do in the day and what we expect to be done by the end of the day. That's really important for keeping everyone like accountable, because like I said, realistically, you're going to probably bootleg it. You also know you're not going to be able to afford an office. So you have to kind of keep that connection. So we do that via having those daily stands. We also use Slack, and we have a couple of channels on Slack to discuss things all day. And then maybe like once a month or a fortnight, depending on what we need to do, we'll actually get together physically at someone's house, or we've got an office in Uxbridge now that's a good place for us to meet.
Isn't that quite expensive having an office in Uxbridge? Can you find somewhere cheaper?
No, so it's actually free. The reason it's free is because of what I touched on earlier about finding a complementary job. So myself and one other member of our team now work as lecturers at Greenaway University. And because we knew we were both applying for this job, we kind of negotiated with them an office space that's actually for the studio. So the studio's partnered with the uni in order to facilitate some of those overheads. And it's kind of weird stuff like that you always need to be looking out for. If you can find a partnership with someone, particularly if you're doing a job for them anyway, get as much as you can out of them and direct it towards your own business.
Not a bad idea. Anyone else?
Hi.
So one experience that I've had during college is I can't remember. Basically trying to manage your time properly. So in thought of a very over-ambitious task, and then halfway through, I realised that I didn't have enough time.
Yeah.
So what's your experiences with that sort of problem?
With time management. So I think it's Hofstadter's rule. It's like things will always take, the Hofstadter's rule is things will always take longer than you think, even if you include Hofstadter's rule, which is pretty much hits the nail on the head. You're never going to get time management right. When you're thinking about a feature of a game, you'll estimate what it's worth. My advice is always to double it. As soon as you're sure that it's going to take 16 hours, say it's going to take 32 hours, because it absolutely will. It will probably take 64. Start with that, double it. And then when it actually comes to like making sure I know what I'm doing each day, we all have a shared Google Calendar. And each day, every member of the team puts in what they're going to be doing that day. And again, it keeps people accountable. It lets you track over time how you're doing as well. So if you find that you're consistently missing your targets and your deadlines, then that's when you need to stop and reevaluate everything else moving forward. So you're never going to get it right straight away, but you should track what you're doing with your time, plan what you're doing with your time, and then regularly check that those things match up. Yeah, that's pretty much it for time management.
Okay, we've kind of come to the end of the talk.
Yeah.
Is there anyone with desperate questions? There's a desperate question over here.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay.
I've been looking into like tax break stuff, like
Mhm.
the British game tax break for doing something British related. Are there any that we should know of?
So the video game tax relief is what you're talking about, right? So it's my understanding that that applies to profits. I may be mistaken with this. I would definitely, yeah. So part of registering your company and getting VAT registered means that you can like officially, they can, when it comes to claiming that stuff back, you're kind of already set up. So my advice on that was just be aware of it. Make sure whoever's doing your business development is on top of it. Submit your books for your VAT returns, because every time we submit a VAT return, we get loads of money back because we don't make any money. So just, yeah, always have, I know it's super boring, but have someone dedicated to that stuff and be aware of it.
Yeah, I think there's some restrictions as well. So if you've got a research grant, and it's got a research grant, then it's not eligible for it. There's little things like that that you need to be aware of. As you say, find somebody who knows exactly all about the fund.
Yeah. The tax relief.
tax.
Yeah.
And
The qualifications are pretty light. I think you just have to kind of be British, and that can really just be like all your employees. Yeah. No. I mean, it helps. I mean, our game is sort of culturally British in some sense. It's quite inspired by Monty Python, and it's got a lot of British language in it. But I don't think those things are essential for claiming video game tax relief, so I wouldn't worry about it too much.
okay, so put your hands together, please, for Harry Greenaway.